In this video, we're going to talk about adding the color to our Jasper Johns inspired painting. So we have our border, we have our letters, and we are ready to begin painting. The need for this is obviously your drawing, your watercolor paper. You're going to need two brushes, a medium round and a thinner brush for the little areas. Obviously a set of watercolors, a cup of water, okay. A little sponge or a paper towel, or both, actually. I probably should grab myself some paper towel. And you may have one of these color wheels on your table, or each one of you may have one of these. If you don't, come see me and I'll show you where these are located. Well, I can tell you right now they're located at the painting station. If you're doing this from home, you can look up a color wheel on Google under images, and you should find one that has all the colors of the color wheel plus their names, okay? So if you don't find something exactly like this with this over here, which isn't important right now, you're really just going to need the colors and the names, okay? We're going to talk about something called or analogous colors, because that is the color scheme that we're going to be using for our painting. Now, harmonious and analogous colors are basically colors that are situated very close to each other on the color wheel, usually three colors next to each other. So they're like direct neighbors, okay? So where complementary colors are across the street, these are actually the three neighbors next to each other. So harmonious colors could consist of just your warm colors, they consist of just your cool colors, or you could have some warms and some cools mixed together, such as yellow, green, and green, or yellows and greens, for example. You could also have red violets mixed in here with blues, okay? You could even have red going into violet and so forth, okay? So three colors next to each other. So you want to think about what kind of colors you want to incorporate on your paper. Now, in Blend, you'll see an example of this finished product with warmer colors, which is fine, okay? I'm going to be using the warmer colors just to kind of show you how this works. It doesn't really matter. So, as you saw in the how to make just a basic opacities, we're going to find the colors that we want to use, and we're going to want to go ahead and activate them. So I'm going to get all my reds and my yellows, my reds and my oranges activated. So I'm just going to put some puddles of water inside my pails because they are dry. Okay, just like that. Now, if you notice, this orange has a little bit of green in it. So the way to clean that up is once I get a puddle in there, I want to dry off my brush completely. And then I'm just going to take my brush, I'm going to go in, I'm just going to let the brush soak up that area that had the color in it. There we go. Now there's no more green in there. I am going to return a little bit of the water there. Okay, there we go. So now my watercolors are nice and ready to go. So for this, we're going to be taking that whole idea of the opacities and we're going to be applying them to our paintings. And you want to make sure that each shape has a different opacity. It could not only have a different opacity, but it can also have a different color, okay? So I'll show you how that's going to work. And I'm going to work with this large section over here first, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do after we get one section down, okay? Some reminders. So I'm going to start off with just a regular orange color. So I'm going to take my brush, I've got a pail of water in there, I'm going to take off a little bit of my water, okay? I'm going to get my fingers kind of close to the ferrule. This is called the ferrule of it's the silver part or the metal part of the brush. This is what holds the bristles together. And the closer I get, the more control I have. It's going to be kind of like I'm using a pencil, okay, or a pen. And I'm just going to kind of get a little bit of paint on my brush. And then I'm going to start in the corner. Let me zoom in here so you can kind of see. I want to go very, very carefully. This is getting close to an 80% opacity, but the more that I drag the color down, you can see it's getting lighter, about a 50%, which is good, and it gets even lighter. I'm just going to keep taking this around, using the tip of my brush in those corners very carefully, gently filling in the space, just like you would using a colored pencil to fill in a shape, okay? But what's going to start to happen is the water is going to start to write strokes, and when that happens, I'm going to need to get some more water or watercolor on my brush, and you can also see it's getting really, really light, which is totally fine. I can I can keep that lightness if I want, but I am starting to get dry strokes now, so it's time to do one of the following: either get more water and have it go lighter, or get a little bit more color. In this case, I'm going to get a little bit more color on my brush. And now I'm going to start from this end. I'm going to turn it around a little bit. Don't hesitate to turn your paper. Just be mindful that you're not resting your arm on a wet spot. I'm just going to take this back in. Back this way. Now what's going to happen is it's going to, okay, I'm starting to get some dry streaks. So I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush. I barely tipped my brush into the water, and now I'm just going to kind of bring it back out. And what you see here now is something we call an overlay. So these darker areas are coming into the lighter areas. To fix that, I just keep getting my brush just a little bit wet and just bringing it back in until it kind of disappears, okay? All right, so there's one section done right there. Now, instead of going to the space right next to it, I'm going to go over to maybe an opposite side. And the reason is because if I put two wet areas next to each other, they're going to bleed together. I want separate shapes, okay? I don't want anything bleeding or blending together. I don't want two shapes blending together. Let me put it that way. They can blend together within this shape, but not two shapes together. So while I let this dry, I'm going to go work on another area, and it could be over here, it could be down here, wherever, any place that's not touching. There's a really interesting shape right here that's caught my eye. I'm going to go ahead and work there, and I might change the color this time, or I might stick with the orange. It doesn't really matter. But whatever I do, I'm just going to have to remember that whatever is next to it is going to have to be a different opacity or a different color, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and work with maybe a lighter orange now, the yellow orange. So I'm cleaning my brush off, getting most of the water out. I'm not completely drying it, just getting the drips out. Now I'm going to dip my color, my brush in the other color. Now I'm going to start with this shape here. Start bringing it down. That's a pretty dark shade color so far, pretty dark opacity, but again, as I start bringing it down and spreading it around, it's going to get lighter. Really keep your fingers close to the okay? All right, so that's the second one there. Of course, I'm not going to paint any shape that's next to that one. Now I want to kind of move over a little bit. So maybe I could work on, I don't know, this shape right in here is a nice shape, kind of big, but that's okay. So maybe in here I want to bring in maybe now like a red color. So I'm going to clean my brush off, get off the dampness. Oops, this didn't have a lot of, there we go. Okay, so now dip my brush in here, and so I'm just going to work on this one. Okay, this is pretty light right now. This is a good 30% right here, which I can go ahead and keep if I want to. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to show you, I think this is dry enough over here. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to show you what you're going to do when you have a shape, okay? So again, you can either change the color or you can change the opacity, and I'm going to do a little bit of changing the opacity. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with that orange that I used, but I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm cleaning my brush off with the red that I was using. Of course, I'm going to take off as much water on here without squeezing it as I can. I'm going to dip the tip. Let me just show you what I'm doing here. I'm going to dip this back into the, okay, got a little bead of water color on there. Now I'm going to take my painting and that is very, very dark. That's opaque almost, which I don't want that either. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean off my brush. And I'm going to start back at the top and drag it down. Spread that color out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so it's not necessarily 80 anymore. It's more like 50. And the more I keep dragging it, okay, but there's still a difference in opacity. Do you see that? This one still looks darker than the same color, just more pigment on the brush. This has more water on the brush, or less pigment on the brush, okay? I'm going to go ahead and dip it back in, though, because it's starting to fade, and I don't want it to get too light because I want that opacity to show up, the difference in opacities to show up. Okay, there we go. Let that kind of bleed back in there, okay? So this is what we're looking for. Same color, different opacities, right? I mean, I could have easily changed the color as well, which I think I'll do here because I don't want too much orange in one spot. I might bring in some red over here now and kind of, change. But if you do happen to put two colors together, this is what you're looking for. So your overall painting at the end should show different opacities. We should be able to see a lot of 50s and 30s, maybe some changes within a shape. Definitely different opacities when shapes are next to each other, especially if they're the same color. And that's how you want to do the whole thing all the way around. So when we look at the next video, once this is completed and dry, I'm going to show you how to add colored pencil just to give it another element, another sort of layered effect, another little bit of interest. And we're going to be working with shading and fading out the same way that we did working with the opacities.